Okay, I'd like to call the November 21st, 2016 San Carlos County Commission meeting to order. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. If I can have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradley?
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Present.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen is absent this evening. Vice Chair Silberman?
Present.
Chair Bergman?
Present. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on the agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on an item that is not already on the agenda? Did you want to? And if you could give us your names, it'll help us for the minutes later on.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Amit Haller, and I'm with Dragonfly Group, a developer here in the city. We wanted to present today, real briefly, some of our recent developments in the city, things which are going on and things which are coming up, as well as to encourage some brainstorm about new way to look into a future development in the city. So, we love to live in the Bay Area, we love to live obviously in San Carlos, and for the many reasons listed here, surrounded with the best weather, best people, best universities, schools, hospitals, and we also have the best forward thinkers in this city. The forward thinkers help us to adjust to new economies, new development, new movements. They help us to move forward, and they bring the most valuable resource on earth, which is the human brain, to the Bay Area, to the city itself. And obviously, the human brain can solve any problem. That's what we've seen in the past thousands of years, and that's what we're going to see in the future. And I would like to talk about a very particular problem that we are facing here, and this is the housing shortage. So can the human brain do something with that? And obviously, our belief is that yes. So let's solve the housing shortage in...
Sorry, can I interrupt you for a second? So was staff aware that there was going to be a presentation today?
Yes, we were. And this is, well, I know you're going to get to the point of, why you're here tonight. But perhaps, I can introduce Dragonfly. They had inquired with staff, asking about if they can come to the Planning Commission to introduce themselves and their team, because they're working on a number of development applications within the city that would eventually come before the Planning Commission. So their request to staff was to ask for a venue where they can introduce themselves to the Planning Commission. And so we suggested that they do that during public comment.
Presentations are supposed to be agendized. Obviously people can come and introduce themselves, but public comment is supposed to be for, the public to, make a couple minutes worth of comment. This is not a criticism of you, sir. I don't know how this anyway, how long do you have, sir?
Probably 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'll speed it up.
He said 3.
3 minutes, 3 minutes. No, 43, no. So actually, let me actually go to, we'll start to fast forward here. So one of the challenges, the biggest challenges for us developers is obviously the parking, and we all know parking and traffic, that's one of the biggest issue, and in particular when we develop condos, we end up very reasonably with the need to have 2.5 parking spots per unit. 2.5 parking spots per unit equal 500 square feet, and with the all overhead around it, the turnovers, etc., it's actually 80 to 100% overhead, which is increasing into almost 1,000 square feet, which is the whole unit. And the idea that we actually would like to discuss today and to present, other than some of our projects, is how can we deal with parking slightly more creatively in order to increase the number of units, and in particular increase potentially the number of BMR units, the below market rate units in the city. So obviously, to the question, can we live without parking? The immediate answer is no, but there are some other solutions around it. Encouraging, for example, developers to come with car-free solutions. To encourage developers to include in the developed units some of Uber-like type of services. A company named Lux actually already doing it in San Francisco and New York, and actually working even with Austin, in Austin and the city, actually to bring into the code the ability to have kind of valet park of services to the units themselves, with an off-site parking versus on-site parking, where the real estate is very lucrative. And actually, with creating some unique parking solution, utilizing the existing parking spots, we actually can double the number of units, almost double the number of units and density in the city. And basically, to summarize up, our mission is actually to remain the forward thinkers and to encourage it within the whole city. Just as a quick background, and so you all be familiar with what we are doing here, the one on Cherry Street, the big hall right now over there, 34 units coming toward the end of next year. It's part of our development, very modern inside, very traditional on the outside. We are proposing a Walnut Street development just in front of, or just behind, basically, the existing condos project over there. On Laurel Street, we submitted an application for a couple of townhouses development over there. Elm Street, another one that is being proposed right now with the city, and another couple of projects on Prospect Street. So overall, and the other kind of, I would say, the news that becoming pretty known in the city is that we are about to close and purchase the Black Mountain property and to develop over there too. So overall, we are pretty busy in this city. We love this city, and we take it very seriously as far as what we try to do here, and we try to do very big differences to the residents and for the potential new residents in this city, which I cannot afford it today. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, or? I guess not.
I don't think we really can ask questions. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else that is to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, I'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Do you have any changes to the either or weeks?
I don't have any changes.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission approve the minutes of both October 3rd, 2016 and October 17th of 2016.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Silverman?
Aye.
Chair Bergman?
I'm abstaining. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing. And the procedure for the public hearing is that staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed with the staff's recommendation. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out speaker forms found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speakers should come up to the microphone to speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist our staff in preparing the meeting minutes. So the first thing on the agenda is 600 Knoll Drive, APN 050-112-170, request for design review approval to construct a new 7,598 square foot residence, a new 751 square foot detached garage, and a new 555 square foot detached second dwelling unit for a total of 8,904 square feet, a waiver to the 400-foot separation requirement for the second dwelling unit, a waiver for the setbacks of the second dwelling unit, a waiver for the overall height requirement of the downhill building face requirement, a grading and dirt haul certificate, and a tree removal permit. Okay. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jill Lewis, and I'm presenting to you the project at 600 Knoll Drive on behalf of Andrea Martisich. The 20,931 square foot project site is located on Knoll Drive. The property is oriented towards Knoll Drive while the rear of the lot faces Elizabeth Street. The property has a 31% slope. This is the site plan. Knoll Drive is located at the top of the screen and is the front of the residence. The detached garage faces and exits onto Elizabeth Street. There are 5 protected trees on site, one of which is proposed for removal and is shown on the plan in red. There we go. Sorry, technical difficulties. So the proposal is for a 7,597 square foot residence consisting of 3 levels, which includes a basement. The house will be minimally visible from Knoll Drive, as a majority of the residence is set below grade at Knoll. Most of the massing will sit below Knoll Drive. The footprint of the main residence is approximately 2,788 square feet. It utilizes a contemporary style of architecture with varying angles, roof lines, and architectural features designed to help break up the mass of the residence, ensuring that there are varying elevation planes and avoiding any large, massive walls. Several materials are proposed for the new residence. Portions of the residence will be in a silver gray stucco. The upper levels are made of sustainable siding. The siding is composed of 25% rice husks and is LEED certified. The lower levels will be limestone veneer. The roof will be standing seam metal in midnight bronze. The windows in a dark brown color. An exception to window trim is allowed when the design is complementary to the structure, to the architectural style of the structure, which the planning division is supportive of. A detached garage is proposed to be located within the hillside. 3 spaces. One is for the proposed second dwelling unit, which I'll get to in a sec. Access to the garage will occur from Elizabeth Street. There will be stairs from the interior of the garage to grade above. Materials will be exposed concrete, and the garage doors will be wood with a steel header. Railings on both the main residence and detached garage will be cable. The proposed detached second dwelling unit is located on the narrower portion of the lot. It measures 555 square feet in area and is oriented for solar panels. It incorporates the same horizontal siding as utilized for the main residence and a matching standing seam metal roof for the portions of the roof uncovered by these solar panels. There are requests for 4 waivers. Excuse me. The first being from the 400-foot separation requirement for second dwelling units. Waiver number 2 is for the second dwelling unit setbacks. The third is for the downhill building face, and 4th is the overall building height for the main residence. So a waiver for the separation requirement is can be granted for if the reviewing body finds that there are no privacy or noise or otherwise impacts to neighboring properties. The primary impact in this case would be parking, which has been addressed through the third car covered parking in the garage. The waiver for, the second waiver is from the second dwelling unit setbacks. This is considered a through lot, so the required front and rear setbacks for a detached second dwelling unit will be 20 feet 10 inches per code. The applicant is requesting an 18-foot 11-inch setback from the front and rear property lines. This will allow the shape of the unit to follow the angled lot lines, as well as to provide enough roof area for solar panels. Waiver number 3 is for the downhill building face for the residents. A maximum of 20 feet downhill building face is allowed, and they're proposing a building face of 20 feet 11 inches. The fourth waiver is from the overall building height. The requirement is 35 feet in the hillside overlay, and the request is for 36 feet 1 inch as measured from lowest point to highest point of the roof. The only portion of the residence that would be above the height limit is a portion of the roof. Staff believes that the waivers meet the findings for the following reasons. There's a minimum natural state requirement of 56%. The area that counts against natural state includes not only the footprint of the residence, but also the driveway, retaining walls, light wells, etc. The greater the requirement for natural state, the less allowable footprint for the residence, and the more likely the height and number of stories would need to increase. In order to accommodate the 20-foot downhill building face height and the 35-foot overall height, a retaining wall would need to be constructed to build up grade at the downhill side of the residence and would require the removal of several redwood trees. The existing lot is unique due to the slope as well as the shape of the lot. The configuration of the lot with two streets intersecting also reduces the usable portion of the lot as the streets taper in. No windows are proposed above the overall height limit and thus should not affect the privacy of the neighbors. The proposed architectural style, again, utilizes angled roofs, which are integral to the design of the structure. Staff supports all four waivers based on the findings outlined. There is a request for a grading and dirt haul certificate. 1,352 cubic yards of earth will be cut from the site, and 1,172 cubic yards will be off-hauled. There will be 135 truck trips. The haul route proposed for empty trucks going to the site is Highway 101 to Britton Avenue to Cedar Street to Orange Avenue to Elizabeth Street, and full trucks departing from the site would utilize a similar route, Elizabeth Street to Orange Avenue to Cedar Street to Britton Avenue to Highway 101. The only tree proposed for removal is tree number 9. You probably can't tell by the landscaping plan in front of you, but an arborist report was included with this staff report. So the only tree removed would be a Canary Island pine tree, which has bark beetles infested. It's on the shared property line with 1750 Elizabeth Street, so the applicant would be required to obtain the neighbor's signature prior to issuance of the tree removal permit. Staff finds that it meets all the findings for removal as, oops. All right, thanks. So meets all the findings for removal due to the infestation and condition of the tree. A conceptual landscaping plan was also submitted. 4 trees are required on site, and there are already 4 existing trees. In addition to the 4 existing, there is a proposal for 4 additional trees, including one 24-inch box, purple smoke tree, and 3 36-inch box trees, 1 silk tree, and 2 olive trees. A majority of the plantings will be native and drought resistant. Staff received 1 email after the staff report was produced and should have been emailed to you and also placed on the dais. Staff received 3 neighborhood acknowledgement forms which expressed no concern. The property owner also received direct correspondence from 2 property owners. The owner at 607 Knoll Drive expressed support for the design and advised the applicant regarding the tree protection and temporary construction impacts. The property owner at 1732 Elizabeth Street also expressed support for the design. The property owner at 621 Knoll Drive expressed concern with possible damage to the trees located in front of her property. The property owner confirmed that if any trucks are required to be on Knoll, that all measures will be taken to protect the existing trees on her property. The property owners at 1777 Elizabeth Street expressed concern, and their comments were attached as part of your packet. Some of their concerns included visibility of the new construction, blockage of views, and deer utilizing the property. The biggest concern from the 1777 Elizabeth neighbors is the location of the proposed driveway and safety concerns regarding that location due to visibility. This proposal was reviewed by Public Works and the Planning and Building Divisions, who had no concerns with the location of the driveway. The proposed driveway is located over 60 feet from the intersection, while the current driveway is at the curve of the intersection. Public Works specifically reviewed the location for safety and indicated that the proposed location is located at a reasonable distance from the intersection and at a relatively straight section of the block before the curve. Further, the proposed driveway location meets the visibility requirements for driveways as outlined in the municipal code. Nothing taller than 3 feet will be allowed in that area. The property owner of 600 Knoll included a response to all these property owners' original email concerns. She also hired her surveyor to stake out the location of the proposed driveway so that the neighbors could better understand the location of the driveway. So with that, the property owner and applicant are also here if you have any questions for them, and we have the building official and city engineer should you have any questions for them.
Any questions for staff?
None right now.
Okay. Does the applicant want to make a presentation?
So my name is Kate Warmington, and my husband and I moved here in 1999. We've lived on St. Francis ever since then, and we have 2 little kids. We have a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old now, so we've grown up right alongside San Carlos. When we moved in, Laurel Street was a sleepy little town or street that rolled up at 6 p.m., and there was blueberries all over the sidewalk. You remember the laurel trees that dropped all that stuff? Back then, Dan and I both worked at Apple, and Dan still does, and we were the beleaguered computer manufacturer, and everybody told us we should quit because Apple was going to go under. It didn't go under, and we'd like to build this great house for our family and kind of stay in San Carlos forever. We looked at a lot of other communities, and there's just no place like San Carlos, and we really want to stay here, and this house is kind of our dream house. So as you can see, this is kind of an overlay of the home that we're proposing on top of the existing structure. It's a little difficult to see, but the white outline is the proposed structure and the brown structure is the existing. There is a very large single-level rancher on the property, and it takes up the entire flat area of the lot. The home that we're proposing here, I hope there's like is there a No. Okay. The home that we're proposing basically shoves the home onto the side of one side of the lot, which kind of allows us to build a nice large house without it getting too large, or like using up the flat area of the lot. And then we'll have a pool in the middle, and a small pool house. Now, the second unit here is a kind of a fascinating story. What we really wanted was a bathroom for the kids, because I was a Red Cross lifeguard, and I know that if you don't have a bathroom close to your pool, your kids, they don't walk inside to use the bathroom. And that's no bueno for me as an ex-lifeguard. I also had to adjust the pool chemicals, and nobody wants to do that. So what we really wanted was a second structure on the lot to be able just to have a bathroom. And I said, well, can we have this bathroom in a little pergola? And they were like, well, you've already got the detached garage, so no. And I said, okay, is there any legal way I can have a bathroom close to the pool? And a friend of mine said, you know, the peninsula has this housing crisis. Maybe you could build a second unit. And I said, cool, okay. And we got to thinking about it. The only time we're really going to use the second unit is during the summer, because we want the bathroom for the pool. And that leaves the whole school year available. And so I'm like, this is awesome. Like, we had visiting professors stay with us all the time. So I'm going to stick a visiting professor in the second unit during the school year, or a kid who needs college campus housing, right? So it's actually going to be kind of brilliant. We have people staying with us all the time anyway, so we're used to that. And it also solves a problem because my mom has early signs of Alzheimer's. So eventually, when she needs to move in with us, which will happen, then we've got space for a caretaker in the second unit, and my mom can be in the main house with us until she needs to go into a facility. So there's a lot of good reasons to have the second unit, and it started off as just being a kind of an outhouse with a plumbing, but it kind of grew. And then, as you can see, we've got the three-car garage below. One of the reasons why we decided to put it underneath the ground level, is that you can walk right on top of it from the second unit, is that we really didn't want another structure kind of cluttering up the lot. And we thought that this was the best way to kind of minimize the visual noise of all the structures on the lot, and still have that three-car garage that was required. So that's why that's there. And plus, because of the slope of the lot, you heard it was 31%, it's really hard to find a location for the garage on a lot that slopes so much, where you're not building a huge tower, or you're not, you don't have a driveway that's too steep, because the 18% maximum grade on the driveway. And so this was the location that we came up with after working with planning. Here are a couple pictures of the existing property. I'm just going to scan through them really quickly. It's really wooded. It's one of the things we loved about the lot. So we've taken really great pains to maintain all of the heritage trees on the site, with the exception of that one pine tree that's bark beetle infested.
Can you go back to the two pictures?
Absolutely.
So is that little stick, because you can see it on Google Maps too, is that where the driveway is marked out? Is that?
So those aren't pictures of the driveway staking. That little stick that's there, I'm not entirely sure what it is. It might be a weed. It's a sprinkler. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's one of my neighbors. So the garage sits right in front of that big cedar tree that you see there, and this is actually a super impressive tree. It's beautiful, and you can see it from all over San Carlos. You can see it from Burton Park. You can see it down from Loyola Park, all the way across El Camino. So it's really a fun tree. So the garage sits right in front of that, just to give that tree enough space to kind of maintain its root structure. And so it'll be on that side. Sure.
Good.
And then you guys saw the color render, so I don't really need to go through those, but I did bring samples of those samples. So you can see those if you wanted to. So this is the rice husk material that she mentioned. It's made from reclaimed rice husks and mineral oil and all kinds of good things. It can be sanded and stained just like wood. The other neat thing about it is that it's 100% reclaimable during the manufacturing process. So whatever they don't actually form into stuff gets reused. And then those are the color samples for the roof and the windows. Let's jump through these in the interest of time. We've taken a lot of steps to make sure that we're kind of getting as close to passive as we can in terms of energy usage. So we've located windows where we need to make sure that we're not losing a lot of heat, that we're maximizing airflow through the property to maintain cooling during the hotter months. The windows are FSC certified. They've got great thermal properties. Like we've gone through so much to make this as eco-friendly as we can, because although the house is spacious, we just don't want it to be an energy pig. So there's that. And then we did a few color renders. So this is the view from Knoll, from standing up on top of the hill, kind of looking down toward the front door. This is the view from kind of midway into that curve that's been mentioned before, and how the cars would look at the driveway. Up above from the pool house. So the one thing that's not reflected here are all of the plantings. There's a significant number of plantings being proposed by the landscape architect, all native species. The only plantings you see on this is the heritage trees. So imagine foliage everywhere. But we wanted you to be able to see the house, and you won't be really able to see the house if we put in all the plants. The houses were really what the point here. The corner at Knoll and Elizabeth, the view to the house, and then I have a render if y'all want to see it, and I'll just bring it over to you. And then because there's so much interest in the garage, what I wanted to do is kind of show you a few pictures of where the garage will go. So this is Elizabeth Street, and you can see that big tall cedar again, and that's kind of where the garage goes in relation to the tree. Another shot of Elizabeth Street. And there's the garage again. And from the other direction. And from further away down the street. And that's it. So can I answer any questions?
Any questions for, okay. All right.
Just one quick question. Any idea as to how long, that's a lot of dirt, so how long the hauling would take?
I brought our builder. Sean, you want to answer that?
Yeah, typically,
Please step to the podium.
Sean Miskelly with Conrado Builders. Typically, we would want to expedite that in a really fast fashion. Under 2 weeks would be our goal. And, set up all of the additional protections. And we're used to working in areas where we need to be very attentive to our hauling activity.
Okay, thank you.
And how would you protect the trees? Would you speak to that?
We would take each tree on each approach and examine it. We would bring in we have a consultant, Kevin Kelty is the arborist who's on board. We would consult with him. We would ask for his advice on how to best protect each set of trees. Our reputation is built on being as less invasive to a community as possible. I myself grew up in San Carlos and graduated from Carmel a very long time ago. But I love this town as well, and I love building in this town. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, good.
Okay. All right. I have several speaker cards here. I'm going to open up to public comment. So I'm going to give 3 minutes for people to speak, and the first person I have is Mark Hayes. I'm sorry, you can pronounce your name once you get here, because I can't understand. I want to make sure I don't butcher it too bad. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mark Hazeloop. I live at 607 Knoll Drive, and I've lived there for 23 years. I want to thank you first for the time you put in protecting our community. I sat on this commission for 9.5 years, and I know the time commitment that you put in, especially on a project like this with a 279-page staff report for a single-family residence. Moving to the exceptions, I think you can find for all of them. As you know, the numbers in our zoning code are arbitrary. Why do we have 35 feet instead of 33 or 32 or 28? Why do we have 20-foot setbacks instead of 19.6 or something like that? The reason that there are exceptions to all these things are because there are certain unique qualities to every piece of real property. And as been pointed out, this piece is truly unique. It's pie-shaped. It's 20,000 square feet, which is very, very large for San Carlos neighborhoods. I live directly across the street, and when I heard that a 5,000 plus square foot house was going in directly across the street, I go, whoops, there goes my view. And the view is one of the reasons I bought my house. It's quite panoramic of the bay. I see Mount Diablo, I see Mount Hamilton, and everything in between. I have to compliment the applicant and the architect on being incredibly sensitive in setting this property as low as it is. Will I see it from my house? Yes, but I see every other house in the neighborhood as well. It will not block my view. The garage is exceedingly well located, and I thank them for that. The only thing about the second dwelling unit and the exception is I've always thought that was a little tough, that the first guy in the neighborhood that gets a second dwelling unit, nobody else within 400 feet can build one. That had never seemed quite fair to me, but let me move on since I only have a few minutes. I've lived on this, as I said, for 23 years on Elizabeth. One of the issues that arises is the driveway location and safety issues on Elizabeth. I drive up and down Elizabeth several times a day, and my wife and I walk up and down that street at least twice a week. And car traffic, the street's no narrower than most streets in San Carlos. What is unusual is there's no sidewalks, and the city right-of-way drops off on one side, on the lower side, and is steep on the other because it's a hillside location. Municipal Code Section 18.15.040 states that there is not to be any vegetation above 3 feet tall in the public right-of-way on any side of the street. Additionally, there's supposed to be a 12-foot view angle from the driveways. This project will improve the safety, pedestrian safety on Knoll Drive immensely because it will totally clean up all the clutter that you saw on that particular side of the street. The trees will be raised to the 7-foot requirement. All that brush that now overhangs the street will be removed. In fact, one of my neighbors, I think, went down one time and cut some of that brush. He'll remain nameless, just for safety purposes because the cars are brushing up against it.
Are you close?
I'm close to being done.
Okay, thanks.
I would urge the neighbors on the other side of the street to also obey the municipal code and cut down the 10-foot oleanders and create view angles so that their driveways are as safe as this driveway is going to be. Lastly, my only concern is with the off-haul route. I think coming in and going out the same direction is untenable. My project in Belmont that we're doing right now, we move 90 trucks on Thursday, 52 on Friday, and you can only do it coming in one way or the other. I think you need a straight line haul route. Bringing in a 10-wheel end dump and expecting it to turn around on this lot is unrealistic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next part I have is for Christine Stevenson.
Hi, I don't have anything prepared, but I live right across the street, right across from the oak tree, which is over 100 years old, I'm sure. And what I've noticed in San Carlos is oak trees are falling right and left, including my previous house in White Oaks. And it was quite a tricky thing that the new owners did. Anyway, I am concerned this oak tree is going to get damaged, and it's not going to be protected like you say it's going to be. You're putting a pool under it. Who puts a pool under an oak tree?
Can you address us instead of the audience?
Yeah. I have a lot of concerns about that. I've lived there 33 years, and what is not being addressed is Knoll is keeping their views. We're having this new house looking down on our house, and without that oak tree, it's going to be quite evident. The main problem, though, is that garage, because I live on the flat part of Elizabeth. Goes up a hill, flattens out, goes up. And if you have a low car like I have, you cannot see anybody until you get right in front of my house. They'll be backing out of their garage, and somebody's going to get T-boned there because people fly up that hill. You can't see anything. In fact, my previous next-door neighbors had a head-on just leaving their parking space in front of their house, somebody coming up the hill, they collided because you can't see anything. The driveway as it exists now on Knoll is a perfect placement for a driveway. That stop sign is not busy. I've been there 33 years, walk my dog every day. There's hardly any traffic there. It's very safe. This is very concerning to me, that there's no street parking on Elizabeth except what you privately provide for yourself. Knoll, the Knoll side of this property, has about 300 feet of off-street parking area, but this is not being addressed right now. You have a 3-car garage here, one garage for a separate dwelling unit, which is probably going to become a rental. You can't provide one parking space if you have all these people visiting, and where are people going to park? Better not be in the street, because if you start parking on Elizabeth Street, then it starts happening all down the street. Everybody who moves into the neighborhood, who's new, starts parking on the street at first. And it's very unsafe because it curves and then it flattens out. It's very dangerous. I had another friend who had a head-on collision down lower on Knoll because you can't see traffic coming and going. So these are my concerns. And it's huge. It's practically 9,000 square feet. It's changing the look of the neighborhood. And I just think that second unit is too big, and I don't like where the garage is. And I want to have some off-street parking provided.
All right. Thank you. The next card I have is for Ginny Grant.
That tall. Hi, I'm Ginny Grant. I'm at 688 Knoll Drive, a neighbor two houses down. Up, I guess that is. So this is the first time we've heard about this. It's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful use of that space, but I have similar concerns about the driveway placement as well as timing of the other homes. We're going to have 3 homes built on Knoll Drive at the same time that yours is coming into play. And what that's going to be like for us is the sandwich layer in between these 3 homes. So that's the 2 things. My worry as we come down Knoll and take that hairpin turn onto Elizabeth is I'm very worried about your cars coming out and getting hit as people come around that blind curve. But it sounds like the city has looked into that and watched the traffic go through there, but it's a grave worry for me. But the other one is the timing of all the other trucks and parking, and the madness that will go on with 3 homes to our, I guess, west of us, and then plus yours. It's going to be major construction along there, and like to just make sure that the city's looking at how we can work through that.
Okay. Thank you. The next card I have is Sarah Timby.
Sarah Timby at 621 Knoll Drive. You already received my major concern, but 2 other questions occurred to me, and one is what people are bringing up about the parking, the off-street parking, and it is a concern when you have that big of a house with so many people, so many cars. I don't think 3 parking spaces is going to be enough.
Can you address the commission instead?
Yeah. As 2 of the previous people mentioned, the parking along Elizabeth has long been a worry to me. Lately, they have been parking off the pavement on their private property on the downhill side. On Knoll Drive, I don't think it's allowed to park off as far as I understand it, you have to park off the pavement, and there's not enough room on either side to do that. Am I correct? Is the rule. I know on Elizabeth, people have had to park on their private property on the downhill side, off the pavement, off the
I'm not
city.
sure. Maybe we can have the building department speak to that, or the staff can respond. I'll hold the question. We'll answer that, and we can go through things.
That would make a big difference to what happens with the parking that people have already brought up. The other question I really had of you, and has nothing to do really with, it has to do with your legal requirements for the dirt hall, is I thought it could not be done during the rainy season. Is that correct?
It is. I think that
Was it-
April is no hauling can happen before a great
Is it
deal.
from October to April or something?
April
I thought I saw.
30th, I think I read at one point, which means this wouldn't begin until April 30th. Am I
It was April
correct?
1st, but it's in the report. I read it again. I mean, I've seen it before,
Yeah.
but what's that?
It's on the dirt haul certificate. I think it's the 30th.
I think it's in October to April that it was not allowed, so it couldn't start until then.
Through the chair, that's
April
correct.
30th.
April 30th, and then October
Okay, that's
1st.
not really all, those were just two clarifications I wanted to ask for. Do we have any clarification on the parking off the pavement? Is that going to be possible to get?
We'll get to that when we're
Okay.
wrapping up here.
Yeah, we'll answer the question. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the next speaker's card I have is for Kathleen Gallagher.
Good evening, Kathleen Gallagher, 1777 Elizabeth. Really appreciate the time that you're taking today. I'm also a member of San Carlos Green, which is the recognized sustainability group, volunteer group in San Carlos. Been a member there for about 4.5 years. So first of all, I just wanted to say it's beautiful property. I support the owner building a beautiful home. There's a lot of beautiful elements about it. The big concern I've got is looking at the housing element and the guiding principles that the city of San Carlos has. And I feel that there's contradictions about what is being approved, the variances, et cetera. And so dating back to February 1st of 2016, we had sent some letters and emails noting our concerns about the project to the applicant, most notably regarding where the current garage is. I think the pictures show that the speed, I wish there was a video to show, we're on that street, obviously daily, we live right on Elizabeth Street. The speed of the cars is exceptional. It's a very highly trafficked, a lot of runners, a lot of walkers. So we're really concerned about the location of the driveway. I feel like it's in contradiction to a lot of the elements that the city of San Carlos has approved. And what those are is the guiding principles is to promote environmental sustainability and protect natural resources. What this project involves is removing 1,172 cubic yards of soil. That is in contradiction to other characteristics that of city documents are stating, which is minimize land disturbance and earth moving. Another one is protect and minimize changes to natural topography and retain existing vegetation. When I look at where we are now in the current state, it's beautiful. It's a real variance to what is proposed. What we're hoping is that you would consider modifications to this plan, most notably what our neighbor talked about, which is a modification to the location. It's 20,000 square feet. I think that there are some solutions about where that garage can go. It's a dangerous location where it is now. So in conclusion, thank you so much for your consideration. We would really request, and I request, a modification to the location of the garage, most notably because I think it's in variance to what our housing element states, our goals, our policies, our actions. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next card I have is Kevin McCarthy.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Kevin McCarthy at 1777 Elizabeth Street. Fortunately, two very well-spoken women came before me and took all my words away. Thank you, Kathleen and Christine. I won't add a lot new to what they said, but our real concern really is the safety of that garage access. If you tried to put this garage in a more unsafe location on Elizabeth Street, you couldn't find one. And really, it's unfortunate that there was a comment made about sort of, Knoll being unsafe versus Elizabeth. And it's unfortunate that we have to look at these choices. The reality is far more people drive up and down Elizabeth Street than Knoll. The location of the garage is in sort of a false flat area. For any of you that maybe have gone out there, it's a very strange thing. If you're a runner, you love it when you get to that spot and you're like, I've reached the top of the mountain. And the reality is you haven't. You've just hit this little flat, and the problem is above it and below it are these blind spots. So that really is our major concern. I do want to make a couple of comments about some language in the staff report. On page 4, under design review, there's a statement about the footprint of the proposed residence will be approximately 1,200 square feet less than the existing single-story family residence. I just want to point out it's really a misleading statement. The house itself, looks beautifully designed, but it's not just the house. It's the pool, it's the second units, it's the detached garage. You put all that together, it's a substantial expansion of the developed portion of the site. If you go to page 10 of the staff report, a couple of things to note. First, there's a comment in the middle of the page. Furthermore, there are no established wildlife corridors within this developed area. So I don't know if that's written from a legal perspective. I don't know if there's a legal definition around what a wildlife corridor is, but for any of us that live in Knoll and Elizabeth, there is a known deer path that comes right up Elizabeth Street. It's right along the back fence of this property. The deer come along the path there, come around the property, and they cross over the existing driveway. That's where they safely travel to stay out of the street, and so that's where the pool's going to go. That's where the garage is going to go. So we are going to be cutting off a wildlife corridor. That's it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Next card I have is Courtney Power.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Power. My husband Todd and I and our family reside at 1797 Elizabeth Street. If you remember the overview there with the narrow portion of the pie lot, we are the driveway that you see at the end, exiting. We're on the downhill slope, so exiting not far from the proposed garage on Elizabeth. We're here to offer our support to the applicant and for the plan that's before you. In part, this is actually an old picture that shows the old driveway that we remodeled, in part motivated by the position of that driveway and safety issues that we felt we encountered with our home. I think the perspective that we would offer is having remodeled on a severe slope and trying to balance some of the considerations that I think staff has done in the report before you. You want to mask the low grade. You want to not tower over anybody else's house. You want to blend in as much as possible to the surroundings, and you want to have safe, ingress and egress to the house, both for pedestrians and for cars. And so this is something that we actually spent a lot of time wrestling with, because in some, I'm sure in any remodel, but it seems particularly on a steep slope, those things can be in some pretty, close tension. So, we've observed the applicant and their, revised plans to try and balance all these proposals. And as somebody who's going to be affected by the construction, affected by the ingress and egress of that driveway, which is kind of opposite ours and just a little ways down, we think at this point you've got to rely on folks who are expert in squaring those competing priorities and coming up with a plan, that's safe and appropriate. So, we feel a lot of sympathy for them, or empathy for them, I guess, having gone through a similar proposal to try and do something that was right for our family and right for the neighborhood. So we think they've done that, and we are in support of the plan. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this issue? You just come up and just say who you are.
You can fill it out later.
You can fill it later.
Sure. My name is Alex Horowitz, and I live on St. Francis. And for a while, I've known Dan and Kate for a long time. For a while, I was caretaking the property because they had no one there, and they were concerned that people might come and use it as a party house. So I just want to talk about the deer population, which I'm intimately familiar with. I can't tell you why they come through this corridor, but having just moved from Massachusetts, where we have lots of deer, I can tell you I have a good suspicion that somewhere in the neighborhood, someone is feeding these deer on their property, probably in this line. And when I had my dogs there, the deer didn't come by very often. So I don't know if you guys have, you have a dog, so my suspicion is the deer is probably not a problem.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? No, not on the deer, just on, well, on this item in general, just on, yeah.
Everything I planned.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Before, that's fine, you moved it. Before it's seconded, I wanted to ask the applicant's construction dude a question, if I could. There have been a couple projects where to me, the only concern I have about the driveway is backing into Elizabeth. I actually was just on Elizabeth, and I tried to make a three-point turn, and it was challenging, although I also tried to make a three-point turn on Knoll, and that was pretty ugly, too. In some projects, we've had folks install a turnaround mechanism in the driveway, because to me, like, the biggest concern is folks backing in. I mean, if they were driving straight out on Elizabeth, I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. Is there enough room for something like that?
As far as a permanent turnaround hydraulic,
Yeah.
We would have to do a study and determine that. They're not common, and I couldn't say that would be possible or not today without studying it a little further.
Okay. In 1 second, and I would love to hear it. And then just looking at the picture that's up there right now, the area of the current driveway, is that filled in with landscaping or something, or is there potentially room for a little bit of parking there as well?
As far as construction parking goes?
Sure, but I was actually speaking when the project was over, but also during construction.
I would defer to the design team and the owner for any permanent parking up there.
Okay.
And I would only add, because if I could, that I've heard some concerns with construction activity, that we'll develop a construction plan, we'll consult with design, we'll consult with the building department, and make sure that we could be, again, as gentle on the neighborhood during construction as possible, and keep as many of our vehicles on site. And in cases, we do a lot of hillside building. In cases where there wasn't parking for construction activity, we would then designate an area after consulting with the city, and we would carpool workers to the site from a remote parking area if need be.
Okay, thanks. Did you want to answer my questions? Sure.
So we did investigate the turnaround, and because of the slope of the driveway, we're not able to do a turnaround in the driveway itself. Because when you have a turnaround, it needs to be on a flat location. It can't be on an angle, because as the turnaround pivots, then you have the high point and the low point change. So that unfortunately wasn't an option. I will say, though, that the garage includes charging for the Teslas. The Teslas have to be reversed in to charge, so we will be reversing in whether we like it or not, just to charge our cars. And that if you can see the stop sign here at the intersection of Knoll, naturally slows people down as they're coming down Knoll Drive, so they have to stop there before making that turn. Whereas if you're coming up the hairpin from Elizabeth, there's nothing to slow you down. And so that actually is a concern that the old owners, the Garachis, brought up with us before she moved out, is that it's kind of hard to get out of that driveway. And if you want to try backing out of the existing driveway, well, it can be a challenge itself. And I think that, long story short, if I try to keep the driveway on Knoll, I'm going to anger the Knoll residents, and if I move the driveway onto Elizabeth, I'm going to anger the Elizabeth residents, and so I'm kind of up creek. So there we are.
And is there any plan to keep any of the current driveway for parking or anything?
I'm super glad you asked that. So if you take a look at the northernmost corner of the lot at Knoll, where it goes to 666 Knoll, which is our neighbor up the hill, there's actually off-street parking along that strip of gravel that's off the asphalt. We wanted to turn that into a real asphalt parking pad, but Public Works isn't allowing any permanent structures in the right-of-way anymore, and so that wasn't allowed. So we're hoping just to keep that mulch and keep it a parking area unless it causes some degradation to the hillside and causes like land movement into our front door, which we don't really want. The current driveway is severely deteriorated, which you don't really see in the Google map because it was taken a long time ago. But it will be used for trash, to take the trash in and out, so a path will continue to be there. But I don't think it's an ideal parking spot for pedestrian kind of parking just because of its proximity to that corner. It would be too close to the corner. So we're going to encourage people to park up north on Knoll closer to the pedestrian entrance, which is that path that comes through.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
So there was someone in the back who wanted to make a comment.
Thank you.
Sure.
My name is Joyce Carlson, and I've lived on Elizabeth Street for 42 years. I love the idea that they're going to carpool in the workers because it really has been a huge problem in our neighborhood because there's been on farther down Knoll and on Elizabeth, it's been ongoing for years. But also, why can't those trucks come up Elizabeth and leave going down Cordilleras? It's going to be a nightmare trying to get them up and down. I mean, just on Recology Day, it's a nightmare. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
I mean, Public Works is here. I don't know if they want to comment on the dirt haul route or an alternative. I mean, I want to...
Yeah, I'd like to hear from them. Should we close public hearing first?
We can.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Grace Lee, City Engineer. You'd asked about the haul route. The haul route is actually proposed by the applicant, and we will review it. So the one that's proposed by on the staff report is the one that they've proposed, but we can entertain other routes too. And I'm looking and seeing nods, so it seems like that's something that we can work with the applicants on.
I think we want what's safest and least intrusive to the neighborhood. Do you feel that the way in and out is the least intrusive and the best way in the neighborhood? Do you agreement with it, or do you think there's a better way?
Less intrusive to one neighborhood street might not be the same to another neighborhood street. So it has to be on one street. It has to be a street, right? So a neighbor on Elizabeth might not think that Elizabeth is a good route, or a neighbor on another street. So it really depends on who you're asking.
The part that resonated with me was the argument that this particular dirt hole route is going to require the trucks to turn around. And having tried to turn around on both those streets, that doesn't seem super realistic to me. So I didn't know if you had an alternative proposal that didn't require turning around.
I don't have one now, but for construction, they sometimes can turn around on site, and depends on how the site is configured. But usually the trucks turn around on site and go back out the same way. So it's not turning on the street. Elizabeth, you can't turn on the street anyway, it's too narrow. It'd be turning on the site and coming back out.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Do you have a plan for that?
So the tip of the property where the garage and the second unit currently are would be developed second. We would develop the main residence first, and that's predominantly where the dirt is coming from. It's to build the basement. That will allow a lot of trucks onto the site because that flat area that's kind of created by the demolition will be able to be used for trucks or for any kind of parking that they need to have as well. Then the other thing that really resonated with me is trying to figure out some sort of circle route so the trucks coming in aren't trying to pass the trucks going out. I think this is a great idea. It's not one that we thought about. It's one that I'd certainly love to pursue with city staff because it just makes a lot of sense. So, yeah.
Okay. I was concerned about the placement of the driveway. If we could have someone from the city talk about the safety.
Second, by the way.
Oh, sorry. All right. Roll call, please.
Are we closing the
second.
public hearing?
Yeah, that was the motion.
Very delayed second, yeah.
Very delayed second.
Commissioner Bradley,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Silverman,
Yes.
Chair Bergman.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to have someone from the city weigh in on the placement of the driveway and the safety and sort of address the concerns of the public on that.
Grace Lee, city engineer. Public Works did go out there, and I actually did go out there and do a site visit. Coming up and down Elizabeth, you can see that that segment where the proposed driveway is, it's actually not at the curve. Elizabeth has a pretty big curve, but that's on the upper end. So when you're coming down Elizabeth towards the site, the proposed driveway location is actually where the road slightly, it's actually where it starts to straighten out. So I don't see any kind of visibility issue there. Staff also took data, speed data, as well as vehicle volume data, and they're both relatively low. 85th percentile, which means 85% of the people that drive on Elizabeth, they drive 25 miles per hour, the posted speed limit, or less. So it's a relatively low speed, low volume, local residential street. So based on that, staff doesn't have any issue with the proposed driveway location.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, any discussion?
The public hearing is closed, I'm sorry, unless we were to reopen it. But we understand that that the folks who are here from Elizabeth believe that it is a highly trafficked, high-speed street, and you know.
Okay. So, discussion?
Just one quick question on the dirt haul. So the dirt hauling certificate, we did notice a route. I think I've asked this question before. I just don't remember what the answer was. If you change the proposed route, is there a renoticing issue?
Yes, we can. That's a component of the project that we can definitely bring back to the commission after doing proper, following the noticing procedures in our code.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the waivers that they're asking for?
Asking for a few waivers.
Well, I used the word waiver, that's not the word, probably, I forget what the...
No, it's the word.
That's the word.
Yeah, that's the right word.
Okay. And we had questions on parking on the one. Could we address the parking, please?
Grace Lee, city engineer. Currently, there is no parking restrictions on either Elizabeth Street or Knoll Street, so residents can park on the street. Yeah, so residents might be wanting to park off pavement because of how narrow the street is, and that's just a choice that they make. But there is no requirement for them to park off pavement.
Okay, thank you. I think that we need to cover at least the construction parking, that they would either park on site or they could carpool up to the site, and that's concerned.
No one has anything they want to talk about? All right. Well, I would like to add one of our becoming standard conditions that requires the applicant to document the state of the road prior to grading, to allow the city to evaluate whether there's any damage to the road that needs to be repaired using the bond. Does anybody have a problem with adding that condition?
No, I agree with that.
Okay. And then...
what about dirt hauling timeframes?
Yeah, same thing. I noticed that the dirt haul, I think, starts at 8 a.m. on the certificate, and that seemed a little early for me during school time. So I was thinking that we would change that to 9. Does anybody feel strongly about that? So I think it's currently 8 to 4, so it would be 9 to 4 instead.
Are we doing Saturdays?
So there's the grading time frame and the dirt hauling time frame, I think, are two different things.
Oh, you're right. So the dirt hauling's already 9 to 4, so it's just the grading that's 8 to 4. So I don't have an issue with that. I mean, that's pretty much it
And
for
we're going to
me.
bring the dirt haul route back if we,
Yeah, I mean, we can have no, it's not really a condition, but direction to, have staff and the applicant attempt to develop a route that allows the trucks to go out on a different direction than they come in, and if they can, to bring it back.
And through the chair, staff can do that. Basically, you just wouldn't be taking action on the grading and dirt haul certificate. It would,
Can't we approve it contingent on staff bring it back if there is an alternate route?
well, my recommendation.
Noticing. It's a noticing issue because they noticed the actual route in the certificate.
Oh, I know. I understand, but I don't want to force them to come back and renotice if they can't come up with a better alternative route.
I see what you're saying.
Because we're just assuming there's a better route, but maybe there's not. But I don't.
And certainly, the commission can choose to approve it and provide some direction. So that's something that staff can look at with Public Works. And if we are able to identify a route that's, works better, we can just bring it back, and you can, I believe, through the city attorney, can we, if we were to bring it back, would that supersede their prior action on the grading and dirt haul certificate?
It would, and I just want to caution that we just want to make sure that we notice if the route has changed in any way.
Sure.
okay, so we can approve as is and then just, with directions to see if something better and then come back. Okay. All right. Anything else?
No. I mean, I'll make a motion.
Entertain a motion.
I'd observe, I recognize we've heard from some folks who are concerned about the location of the driveway. Public Works is the expert. And, I'll deviate from Public Works if I have a really good reason to do so. But, I visited the site. I don't see the sight lines as an objective observer being terribly difficult where they have proposed the driveway. So, I haven't really been presented with any evidence that would cause me to deviate from what staff recommends on the location of the driveway. I do think that, backing out of that driveway is dangerous, but I think backing out of the driveway on Knoll is dangerous. And if there was a way to avoid backing out of that driveway, I would certainly propose it, which is why I suggested the turnaround. But I believe the applicant when she says that she studied it and it's not feasible. So I move that the Planning Commission approve the code compliance certificate for design review of a new residence, detached garage, and detached second dwelling unit. Approve the second dwelling unit waiver from the 400-foot separation requirement. Approve the waivers for the second dwelling unit setbacks, overall height, downhill building face, and approve the tree removal permit. I further move that the Planning Commission approve the grading and dirt haul certificate at 600 Knoll Drive based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the code compliance and grading and dirt haul certificate, with the additional condition that the applicant be required to document the condition of the road immediately adjacent to the development prior to beginning dirt haul. As well as directing staff to and the applicant to meet and confer with staff in good faith to attempt to develop an alternative dirt haul route that doesn't require the trucks to pass each other, and to bring back a renoticed route if a preferable route can be identified.
I'll second the amendment, or I'll second the motion as amended.
Okay. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stilberman?
Yes.
Chair Bergman?
Yes. All right, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is 1119 Industrial Road, APN 046-152-210, consideration of conditional use permit for a large-scale entertainment and recreation use for Laser Quest. This item was heard on October 17, 2016, and is being heard again due to a noticing error. We have a presentation.
Yes, we do. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jill Lewis, and I'll be presenting the Laser Quest project to you this evening.
We're not familiar with it.
No.
What's Laser Quest?
So the background of this project is the first public hearing was held on July 5th, where the Planning Commission discussed the proposed use and associated parking. There were no concerns associated with the proposed use of commercial entertainment and recreation, but there were concerns raised about the parking on site. The second public hearing was on October 17th, 2016. If you recall, you added language to condition number 9 stating when customers arrive at the business, employees will ask them where they parked, and customers will be directed to move their vehicles if they are not parked in designated areas. So you added that modification, and there was a noticing error, which was why this item is before you this evening. There are several conditions related to the parking, 4, 8, 9, and 10. 4 is the possible revocation of the conditional use permit should parking or circulation become an issue. Number 8, installation of signage on the south and east walls of the subject building, identifying where parking is reserved for Britton Corners customers. Number 9 requires the submittal of a customer parking outreach plan, which shall state that no parking is allowed on the adjacent property. And number 10, which requires the installation of interior signage notifying customers, not to park on the adjacent property. This is the aerial view. The only change since the October 17th meeting is that the Laser Quest representative reached out to the adjacent property owner and came to an agreement about the fabrication and installation of the no Laser Quest parking signs. This condition number 9 requires a customer parking outreach plan, and such plan could include the provisions to support this agreement between Laser Quest and the adjacent property owner. So with that, this is the formal motion you would make should you choose to make it. I'm available for any questions you have for staff, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions you might have for him.
Any questions for Jill?
I mean, is there any reason why we didn't incorporate the agreement between the applicant and the other tenants into the certificate?
Through the chair, we discussed that. Jill and I discussed that, but we felt that that would be an action that the Planning Commission take if you really felt that it was warranted. We believe that the customer outreach plan, in addition, one of the changes that we did make, if we can go back to the image, is that this particular image would be Exhibit A to the conditional use permit certificate. So we expressly wanted to include in the condition reference to where customers would not be able to park. If the commission would like to see stronger language or any kind of modification, that's why we kind of left that up to the commission. But staff has no objection to leaving the conditions as they're presently outlined.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. Does the applicant wish to make a statement? Statement, presentation.
Back sooner than I thought I'd be. Okay, hi. I do want to add one thing to it. I want to bring you up to date on the outreach with King Swim Academy and with Satellite. So 2 days after we left the meeting here, I contacted King Swim Academy. I contacted him sent him emails 3 or 4 times asking him for whatever plans he had or whatever ideas he had. To this date, I've not had a response from him. We contacted Satellite, and through Satellite we got to the owner of the property, and we worked for 2 or 3 days on an agreement that we're willing to honor and add as a condition, as an additional condition. So if I could read it to you. The applicant will work with the City of San Carlos principal planner and the owner of the 1121 1125 Industrial Road, San Carlos, the adjacent property owner, to install no parking signs at 112111-1125 Industrial Road. The sign verbiage and the number of signs to be installed shall be determined by the principal planner working in conjunction with the adjacent property owner, and such signs shall be installed in areas set out in an attached site plan. So if we don't have the plan out, but I'll just show you. So it's going to be this part of the building, wrapped around the sides of the building, along the fence line, along this side of the building, and then along that side of the building. The applicant shall be responsible for the costs and sign fabrication and the installation of such sign up to an amount not to exceed $20,000. The fabrication and installation of such signs shall be carried out by the adjacent property owner as directed by the principal planner. Applicant shall pay the adjacent property owner within 5 business days from the date the applicant receives a copy of the invoice or invoices for such installation. The fabrication and installation of such no parking sign shall not commence until the applicant has been issued a building permit by the City of San Carlos.
And they're just going to say no laser quest parking, is that what it said?
It'll be up to what they decide. We'll pay for whatever they want to fabricate.
Okay.
It can say that, it can say whatever they need.
Do you have a copy for the city on that?
Yeah, it was emailed, but I can give you this copy if you'd like.
Any questions for him? Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
you. And I do have one speaker card. Frank Jesse.
Thank you, Commissioners. And I'm Frank Jesse with Satellite Healthcare. And with that condition that Randy proposed being formally and officially added into the CUP, then we're in agreement with it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if the signs say satellite parking only, I mean, that benefits only satellite. But if they were to say no laser quest parking, obviously that will benefit all of the other tenants. I mean, I don't want to micromanage what the signs say, but what was your intention as far as that?
The parking that's affected, unless I'm mistaken, is along our leasehold, along the back of the 1119, our building, and along the 101 fence line and up along the face of our building. So it is primarily Satellite Healthcare. Now I realize that the next tenant down, which is a fish and bait store or another store, also may be affected by people parking on the adjacent parcel, meaning our parcel. So I can see your concern there. It may be more clear to say no laser tag parking. So we're amenable to whatever is a reasonable way to handle that.
Okay.
We're not trying to be proprietary.
Yeah, it's like I wanted the applicant to talk with you, but I wanted the applicant to talk with, all affected.
Academy, et cetera. Yeah.
Property owners. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item from hasn't spoken? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
A second. And roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Silberman?
Yes.
Chair Berkman?
Yes. Okay, any discussion?
No, other than, I'm happy to make a motion, read this language into the record. I overlooked it when the applicant read it, but it does require that the language be determined by the principal planner. So, I think that I would just provide my personal preference, which is non-binding, that the signs be somewhat generic. I don't even know that they necessarily need to say no laser tag parking. It may just be, parking for that building or whatever. I don't want to, whatever planning thinks is best. I just would hate for these signs to get installed and then laser tag leaves and then they make no sense, or satellite leaves and then they make no sense. It'd be nice, since this is gonna, this site is potentially going to be used for some time, that the signs last, considering the amount that's being spent on them. But, I mean, that's the only comment I have.
Close public comment. Is there something you still wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say, I'm the owner of the property next door that would be affected, and I appreciate what everyone said. It does affect a couple other tenants, and I think that we've had a good relationship with Randy. He's gone through a lot of effort to make this thing work. We appreciate you guys, your time, having to do this after the third time, I guess. And I think we've got a good understanding. The only language I think that we should have, and I think we're going to work out between the two of us, or Frank, all three of us, I agree with you, Commissioner, that it should have some kind of generic parking that's no laser quest, but it should also say that violators would be towed. Some kind of, hammer, so to speak, so that it's just worth just the soft.
So I think that working with the principal planner, that you'll come up with
Lisa loves to come up with that kind of wording, so.
Staff will
move
be
that the
happy
plan-
to, oh, I'm sorry, just,
No, don't be sorry. Say what you want to say.
staff is happy to work with the applicant and the adjacent property owners to ensure that the language, and we'll be mindful that the language is kind of is kind of like future oriented, so it's not limited to one particular use that happens to be in place at the time. So we'll keep that in mind as we work together on the language for the signage.
I move that the Planning Commission for the City of San Carlos approve the request of Leisure Entertainment doing business as Laser Quest for a conditional use permit to operate a large-scale commercial entertainment and recreation use at 1119 Industrial Road, APN 046152210, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the conditional use permit, with the additional condition that the applicant is required to work with the City of San Carlos principal planner and the owners of the adjacent building to install no parking signs at the adjacent building. The sign verbiage and the number of signs to be installed shall be determined by the principal planner, working in conjunction with the adjacent property owner, and such signs shall be installed in the areas set out in the attached site plan. The applicant shall be responsible for the cost of sign fabrication and the installation of such signs in an amount not to exceed $20,000. The fabrication and installation of such signs shall be carried out by the adjacent property owner and as directed by the principal planner. Applicant shall pay the adjacent property owner within 5 business days from the date the applicant receives a copy of the invoice or invoices for such installation. The fabrication and installation of such no parking signs shall not commence until the applicant has been issued a building permit by the City of San Carlos.
I'll second that.
Did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes, for the last time.
Vice Chair Silverman?
Yes, for the first time.
Chair Bergman?
Yes. Congratulations. All right, moving on to new business, the 2016 parking study public review draft.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Laura Russell with the Planning Division. This evening, we're presenting to you the 2016 parking study for your review and feedback. Staff is undertaking this work at the direction of the City Council to address parking constraints in the downtown and the South Laurel areas. This phase builds on data collection and surveys that were done in 2012 to 2013. You might remember a presentation that was given to you back then when that original data was collected. So this evening, I'm going to introduce Cordelia Crockett. She's from Stantec, the city's consultant for this project. So she's going to present a summary of the data as well as the proposed strategies. And then Cordelia and staff will be available to answer any questions that you may have. So I will turn it over to Cordelia.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So just a little bit of background on this study. So The occupancy data was taken from 2012 and 2015 in two distinct areas of downtown. The first being what we might call the core area, and then the south of Arroyo area. In the downtown core area, you can tell from this map that there's a wide variety of occupancy in different parts of the downtown. And in the data collection, there was a distinction made between on-street parking and off-street parking. The off-street, this is a different usage than I heard used earlier this evening, but off-street parking being in the parking lots and on-street parking being along the curbs. In this particular map, red means highly utilized, generally over 90%. And then as the colors get cooler, it means it's less occupied. And this particular map represents the occupancy at 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. The data was collected across a Friday and Saturday afternoon, and this map shows that while the peak appears to come around 1 p.m., it drops off a little bit as the evening goes on, and then there's a peak around the dinner time.
So, I'm sorry, this is so not consistent with, my anecdotal experience. I know it's a study, but go back to the prior slide. According to the study you did, downtown at 6 p.m., the parking is only 60% utilized?
2012, though.
And also keep in mind,
Okay, so that...
This is 2012. Also keep in mind this is the average of all of the off-street lots, so this doesn't include the on-street parking. And as you could see in this map, there were 4, so maybe your experience might have been with one of these. It could be less full in the other ones. It did turn out one of the lots was 100% full in the data, but the other lots were less occupied, so that the average came.
And what lots are we including in,
Wheeler, Walker.
Town, which is Clark, right?
Yeah. Then the south lot is the southern one.
That's it, huh? It's not like including the Samtrans garage or anything like that?
Not this map. The study did include an occupancy count of that garage, though. But that's considered a private lot.
And I mean, how are these percentages calculated? So, for example, how many spots are there in the Wheeler Plaza area?
187, I want to say. Well, let's say it's 187. So then, if it was 90%, yeah.
So, do you take? In this, it says it's got a 74% on it or something. But are you taking 74% of 187?
That's correct.
And then, if there's another place where there's just one spot, it's just 100% of one, and then you're merging it all together? Because what I'm trying to, and I'm not asking this in a very clear way, but I would hate for there to be a small lot that's only 10% full and a large lot that's 90% full, and you say, okay, well then it's 10 plus 90 divided by 2.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that, right? Okay.
The denominator is all of the spaces.
All the spots.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry to interrupt. It's so contrary to my own personal experience, which is just not. I know I need to pay attention to data, but it's like any of you. If you try and park and get a burrito at 6 p.m. any day of the week, there's no parking. Please continue.
Okay. Thank you.
You used to be able to do that.
Yeah, I used to be able to get my burritos. 2012. Now I'm circling.
2012. You can stop.
Go ahead.
I'll just point this out. See El Camino in blue? That's where there's parking.
For my burrito? At a park in El Camino? Okay.
For El Camino parking. This represents the private parking occupancy rates and capacity, just showing that there's less occupancy overall of the private parking lots. So general comments that came from these 2012.
Sorry.
As you agree with, point number 1, parking is scarce and difficult to find. Some drivers avoid enforcement by moving vehicles frequently, so to avoid the time limit on the parking. Comments that there are few facilities for alternative modes of transportation, for other ways to get to downtown, and comments that downtown businesses would like more parking for their employees. So I'll move on to the south of Arroyo area. Again, the only type of parking that was counted in this part of the downtown was on-street parking, so curb parking. And again, the red, as you can see, is Laurel, which is mostly occupied, particularly closer to San Carlos and then down at the southern end. And this is sort of what the data looks like. Don't need to go into it in detail, but it does break down the occupancy by hour and throughout the day. So the comments from the south of Arroyo area were that parking demand has increased recently with the new developments and the new businesses opening up in the area, and that employees are parking in prime parking spots in nearby residential areas. So the next part of the presentation is going into the strategies that are being proposed through this study. So again, we're looking at the downtown area in these two parts. In general, kind of comments about the area in general, lots of retail and restaurants. Few options for new parking supply to be built. There are not a lot of empty lots doing nothing. And there's everyone would agree there's a lack of parking availability on Laurel Street. But although that is an indicator of a healthy business environment, so it may be a good thing rather than a bad thing. It means that you have customers in your businesses. So the framework behind these strategies is that they're included if they increase the efficiency of the existing parking supply, if they increase the overall supply of the parking supply, or if they decrease the demand for parking. Oops. And so these strategies are again divided into long-term, short-term, and long-term strategies. The long-term strategies being set aside in case the short-term strategies don't work for some reason. So I'll go into the strategies that address efficiency of the existing parking supply. So the first strategy is to increase enforcement. As mentioned earlier, there's a perception that people just move their car rather than sticking to the time limits in downtown. Whereas if you had more enforcement, people would kind of feel the fear of a ticket or a fine and drive off. In order to increase enforcement, there would need to be more enforcement capacity, and there could also be the use of new technologies to make the enforcement more effective, such as license plate recognition devices. The second strategy is to revise the parking time limits. There's been sort of a consensus that San Carlos is not ready for paid parking, but the other tool available to control demand is these time limits. Currently, generally, there's a 2-hour time limit on parking in downtown enforced between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. The recommendation is to shift this time limit 2 hours later to encourage more turnover in the parking areas after 6 p.m. so that you can find a parking space around 6 o'clock. We also recommend that the city consider variations during Giants games or events at Giants Stadium, like they have in Mountain View, to make sure people aren't parking their car, say at 4:15, and staying the whole night because that's legal. The other part of this too would be to standardize the parking time limits in the city lots and also monitor the impact of changing the time limit on parking on El Camino from 1 hour to 2 hours. Another strategy is to improve the existing signage to direct people to where the parking is now. People might not know that there is this off-street parking supply. There is a wayfinding study already underway, I understand, so this is sort of already being taken care of through that effort. But the concept would be to make sure that the parking, the signage is especially targeted to people looking for parking so that they're not driving around, making extra, using the streets more than they have to. Another strategy to increase the efficiency of the existing parking supply is to encourage private valet. This is a strategy that works in some cities because you can fit more cars onto available parking surface area lots. These can be supplied through partnerships, through business associations, or through the city. And this also helps by moving parking away from some of those prime spots right in front of businesses and restaurants. And part of this, too, would be to monitor the valet assist parking that is starting in next month in association with the Wheeler Plaza construction. Another strategy is to encourage more loading zones on Laurel Street. Right now, there aren't many places where one can either safely pick up or be dropped off by an Uber or a parent or even a paratransit vehicle. So the idea would be to provide these mostly on the perpendicular streets where there's not the angled parking. Another strategy is to assess and modify the employee parking permits. Currently, these are distributed by the Public Works Department, but there's commentary that they allow employees to park in prime parking spots that might be better taken by customers. So the proposal is to divert these employee parking spots to the Samtrans garage or the Samtrans property along the Caltrain tracks. The strategy would require cooperation of employers and employees, and there is an opportunity to monitor what's happening again with the Wheeler Plaza construction because the employee parking spots in this particular parking lot are being shifted to the Samtrans garage. So a long-term strategy, if somehow the previous strategies don't result in more turnover in the existing parking spaces, would be to consider a zoned parking system in which this would discourage people from simply moving their car to a different part of the zone to avoid getting a ticket. They'd have to move their car completely out of a zone. Generally, these type of parking zones are designed such that they're at least a 15-minute walk apart. So it's not an easy thing.
They have in Palo Alto.
Yes, yes. So this is another strategy sort of targeted to the issues being experienced in the south of Arroyo area. Would be a residential parking permit program. So for residents who feel like their spaces are being taken away by employees or possibly shoppers in the downtown area, to be given permits to park closer to where they live. And accompanying this strategy would be to follow what's happening in the greater East San Carlos neighborhood where there has been a parking permit program put in place. Okay, next I'll go into some strategies that relate to increasing the supply, so adding spaces to the downtown area. So the first strategy here is to update the parking in lieu fee. So San Carlos does have a parking in lieu fee, but most people would consider an average cost of $17,936 to be lower than the market rate, or what you can buy, or what it costs to build new parking these days. This table shows what some of the peer cities have in terms of a parking in lieu fee. They're generally above what San Carlos has, and they can be as high as what Palo Alto has, which is $63,000. What we're recommending is something in between. These numbers at the bottom here are based on estimates of what it would cost to build a parking structure in a city like San Carlos, with a difference between whether it's all above grade or whether it has some below grade elements. Another strategy for increasing overall parking supply is to reconfigure the striping in existing parking lots. This would require a separate study, but there is sort of anecdotal evidence that some of the lots aren't striped optimally, and also suggestions that some of these parking spaces be turned over to alternative like bicycle parking, other ways of providing parking. And in addition to that, improving the amenities in these parking lots so people are more willing to use them, like adding lighting and better walking environments. This alternative is encouraging the use of more shared parking. There is a large supply of private parking lots in downtown San Carlos, But let's say it belongs to a bank and the bank closes at 6 p.m. There's no way for the rest of the public to legally use those spots. So this idea would involve city staff entering into agreements with private businesses to share the use of this parking. So in the long term, obviously, build a new parking garage. The city has identified some opportunities to do this. One is that to make use of the new parking supply being built at the San Carlos Caltrain parking lot, and also to partner with developments that are already ongoing in the city. And these could be financed through a variety of ways, an infrastructure financing district, a parking assessment district, or a property-based business improvement district. So the last strategy is to decrease the demand for parking. So this is one option, is to encourage biking. This strategy would involve looking at the parking supply that is already in the downtown, to considering and thinking about where it would make sense to add more parking. Customers would generally be given parking they would want short-term parking generally in front of the businesses, whereas employees would need parking that's more secure and generally in the back of the businesses. This would require working with businesses to create these new facilities and make them available to employees. And related to this would be to monitor regional bike share programs. There's Bay Area Bike Share, and then the San Mateo has its own bike share program. So there are already existing platforms that the city of San Carlos could build on. And in addition to this, overall increasing the bicycle facilities leading to downtown to, again, encourage biking. And finally, would be to provide a general increased promotion of TDM programs in the city. The city already has a TDM program, but this would involve applying it to existing businesses or smaller developments, thereby reaching a wider range of people and residents and employees. So that's it.
What's the transportation management? Can you go back to the last slide? What's the Transportation Management Association?
It's generally can be housed in a city department or by a city staff person to kind of carry out and manage the TDM program.
All right, thanks. Any questions?
Just one quick question. So the data for downtown core was only exclusively 2012? 2015. Okay.
So has the city tried talking to some of the property owners with available parking to go into any agreement with them for after-hours parking? Has there been anything toward that?
So staff has been doing some preliminary work, and it's been primarily by our economic development staff, and that's kind of building up relationships with those folks and talking to them about whether they'd be willing to do that. So some of the work that staff has done so far is kind of talk to the key restaurants, especially in the South Arroyo area, and try to understand their needs, and then also talk to some of the key property owners. Example would be if a lease is continued on, then we would try to get language into the lease that would allow shared parking agreements should an opportunity come up, so the property owner wouldn't have to get back involved later. So we've been doing some of those preliminary steps in order to prepare for an actual shared parking program, should the council wish to pursue it.
Okay. And is the parking study just presented to us and to council, or is there any action taken?
Let me grab my notes. The information that you've received tonight so far has been presented to the City Council Subcommittee for Parking, the Economic Development Advisory Commission at the end of October, Transportation and Circulation Commission last week. So we're taking all of your feedback from the different commissions and integrating that into the full draft study that'll go forward to the City Council early in 2017. So this evening, what we'd like is to receive any feedback that you have have that you would like to see integrated into it. This is different than a lot of, for example, zoning code amendments or projects where a formal recommendation is required by the Planning Commission. So you don't need to do that. If you wish, you could make a motion to recommend adoption of the parking strategies, but we would defer to you to provide whatever feedback or recommendation that you might want to tonight.
I mean, my only comment offhand is that I think it would be useful to know how much of the parking that's being studied is being used by staff of the businesses. I mean, I don't know if you have that data already, but if you determine that that is a significant cause of the parking issue, then that's something that I think you would want to spend time attacking directly. I mean, I know we have limited ability to require existing landowners to do things, but it would be fairly simple to set up, I would think, a program of off-site parking with shuttle for employees. If that is a primary driver of the issue, but we don't know that because, as far as I know, we don't have the data. And that's the only thing that occurs to me.
Can I have more information on what we're doing with the Wayfair signs? I thought was there some kind of grant or something that we applied for, something for Wayfair signs that we're considering, or is that, I'm thinking of something else?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're doing a wayfinding study.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, wayfinding study.
Sorry about that.
So that's underway, and we've done some interviews with some firms, and we're down to selecting our finalist. So we will be bringing that forward, and that's for wayfinding from the edges of the city all the way into the downtown. And one of the issues is people go in circles, as one of the commissioners mentioned.
I just want my burrito, that's all.
Right. We all do.
There's a service that will deliver that burrito
Now,
for
you may want your own burritos. You may also want me to have my burrito, because when my blood sugar is nice and steady, I think that's good for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. And we want to park right in front. All of us do. And
I mean, I'm willing to walk 10 or 15 feet, maybe 20.
Mm-hmm. And so, and it's great to live in San Carlos because we can kind of do that once in a while. So we are doing the wayfinding study, and we'll be bringing that forward in the next year or so. But just to get back to one comment that was made about employee parking, there were quite a number of spaces in the downtown that have been designated for employee parking, and they people get permits, and there's got to be 75 or more, or maybe 100 of them in the downtown area, and all of them are parked all the time. We know that there's lots of employees, and they're in prime locations. We know that the employees are parking there and in other spots. As we've talked to the employees, we've talked to the businesses, and we know what's happening. And it's quite frustrating for those folks to move their cars every couple of hours too. So we're trying to work on some solutions to the employee parking issue, and as you mentioned, maybe it's Samtrans, maybe it's somewhere else, and we're already starting to sort of implement these ideas with our Wheeler Plaza parking plan.
I mean, because that could potentially solve everything. I mean, if you had 100 more spots available, anyway.
I should get a little trolley that goes down Laurel Street and circles and goes around and drops people off and on, but okay. Thank you.
I'd like to commend the staff and the consulting firm for this study and report. I think it will be helpful in our path forward to help the city in lots of ways.
All right, thank you. All right, so next, reports, correspondence, and general information. Do we have any report on recent city council actions?
I can't remember if I updated the Planning Commission last time, but the City Council did take action to adopt a commercial linkage fee.
Okay. All right, any Planning Commission comments or reports?
I'll mention that I attended the American Planning Association statewide conference in Pasadena, saw our planning director, down there also, and I moderated a panel on healthy cities, and was on a panel for the American Institute of Certified Planners study program for planners. That was a couple weeks, about 3 weeks ago now, I guess.
Thank you. Any correspondence?
None other than what has already been provided on the dais this evening.
Okay. Planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects?
Yes, I'd just like to take a minute or two to remind the Planning Commission of a couple of items that'll be on the agenda for December the 5th. December the 5th will include the second study session on lot splits. So we will be bringing back a little bit of additional information that was requested at the hearing in October. No formal action will be taken. As a reminder, staff had planned for at a minimum of 2 study sessions, so this will be the second. And if the commission is ready, we anticipate a formal hearing with the Planning Commission on January 17th, and then moving on to City Council on February the 13th for the first reading of the ordinance, and then February 27th for the second reading of the ordinance. What this would basically amount to is a new ordinance in place, in time before the expiration of the urgency ordinance, which expires in May. So we'd be well in advance of that expiration date. The other item that will be on the agenda for the December 5th is formula business. That particular ordinance is set to sunset, so it is a requirement that it come back to the Planning Commission. I know you've looked at that before, but again, any type of modification to the ordinance requires Planning Commission action, so by necessity, that'll be on the agenda for your review on December the 5th. And then just a friendly reminder to those of you who may have not checked your email, but there has been an email request by Maureen McNulty in the Planning Division asking for your attendance on December 19th. So we're coming down towards the end of the year, and I know it can get a little bit challenging with schedules. So we just want to make sure we understand whether we have a quorum or not for the 19th. And then also with schedules in mind, we are going to be canceling the first meeting of the year, which is on the calendar for January 3rd. So that would be the first day we're coming back after our city furlough. So we think it's in the best interest of getting everything prepared and ready to go to have that meeting canceled. So that would mean your first meeting for the new year would be January 17th. So that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
No.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Do you have